Come on a journey with a cinephile.
Wake up, sucker. We're thieves and we're bad guys. That's exactly what we are.
We was getting too big for our britches.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
What have you done to its eyes?
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Pretty well, little brother. Pretty well.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And you are being joined once again by your tour guide of David Garrett Jr. And we are on episode 275, which is going to pair as a women appreciation as well as a black horror appreciation here. This is going to be episode number 11. The two featured reviews I have for you are going to be Antebellum and Companion. So these both have strong female characters in the lead. Now, the former there of Antebellum does follow Janelle Monáe, and then the other one here is going to be following Sophie Thatcher as our main characters. So then, on top of that, though, I have some mini reviews here for you of my Voyage Through the Fives movie. Is going to be the Body Snatcher. This one stars Boris Karloff. And then I got to watch a screener of Delicate Arch for a movie that is coming to Screambox. Now, I gave a movie a review here that is not necessarily a horror film. It does have some dark elements of In Darkness. And then there is a documentary here that I'm going to do of VHS Massacre Too. And I have another screener here of a short film of Enter the Room. And I'm going to end this out with one episode of American Horror Stories in those mini reviews. So I don't think there's anything else I need to do here for this intro. So I was saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And for my first mini review here is going to be The Body Snatcher from 1945, directed by Robert Wise. Now, this is written by Philip McDonald and Val Lewton. Now, he used a pseudonym when he was writing this, but this is also from the short story by Robert Louis Stevenson. This stars Boris Karloff. It has Bela Lugosi, but I also think he's kind of a much minor role, but it also has Henry Daniell in it. Now, this is a horror thriller film from the United States, currently sitting on a 7.3 on IMDb and a 3.6 on Letterboxd with Snopsby. A ruthless doctor and his young prize student find themselves continually harassed by their murderous supplier of illegal cadavers. So this is one that I discovered due to being on a double DVD with I Walked with a Zombie. This is an RKO Val Lewton double feature. I watched them both pretty close together so I could, file it away. And it was one that I knew I'd come back to, especially after being more versed in the history of horror cinema. I was excited that this featured Karloff, and I also forgot that Lugosi was even in this one until seeing the opening credits for the cast list. And so where I'm going to start is that we have an interesting concept here since it's based on the real case of Burke and Hare, or at least inspired by. I forgot until seeing the opening credits that this is also from a Stevenson short story. Burke and Hare were directly referenced by the character of Gray, who is Cabman John Gray, portrayed by Karloff, and other characters, and some interesting commentary that stems from this, and I'll come back to it. So I want to start talking about the story. Is that it's interesting that we have this doctor here of Dr. Wolf McFarland, portrayed by Danielle, as he's supposed to be this great doctor who has turned to teaching to share his knowledge. Now, he does good to keep the character of Donald Fetz, portrayed by Russell Wade, to help develop his talents when asked to help this little girl of Georgina who was in a accident with a carriage and is now currently paralyzed. Now she's portrayed by Sharon Moffat. He refuses, and that would be Wolf, Dr. McFarland. Now, Don does some questionable things, which results in someone losing their life. Now, I'll give credit here, though. This is taking the idea of what lengths you'll go to help somebody, and it falls into a gray area since it involves murder and even government restrictions at the time, because this takes place in Edinburgh back in 1831, or it might be Edinburgh. If I mispronounce it, I do apologize. So, delving more into this idea, the reason that Burke and Hare did what they did was because the laws that were against, like, the only way you could use cadavers for medical study is that you had to donate your body, so it tended to be the poor people. There were also religious objections due to desecrating the body, preventing them from getting into heaven. Now, they started with grave robbing until they saw that they could make money. When not enough people were dying naturally, they turned to other methods. The movie is using the real-life duo as well as the doctor who was paying them of Robert Knox and incorporating them in. Now, they did this was over 100 years prior to the movie being made, so that's just a disclaimer. I don't think it's necessarily being as callous. I've given that information, though, to say it's interesting how it's used in the story. It is more than just a reference. Gray was a contemporary to that duo. Now, this is also trying to say that Gray was the cabman who transported the bodies that Knox was using as well. Now, he originally was selling them to Dr. Knox, as I was saying, where Wolf was his assistant. For this movie, Wolf is now the doctor, and Don is his assistant. Gray was part of the trial for Burke and Hare. He was protecting the doctor so that he was punished. The meshing of the truth with the fiction is something I can appreciate. Then to fully circle back to the commentary, there is one part here where Gray is looked at as the monster for grave robbing. The doctors needed bodies to learn. Modern medicine wouldn't be where it is today without using the bodies for study. Gray becomes a monster to me, though, when he kills a dog and then people. It is just not, it's when he's just digging up the bodies that it's no worse than what the doctors that are paying him. Now, there is a commentary on class in that Dr. Knox is living like a gentleman in London where Burke and Hare were executed. Wolf would probably be the same where Gray would be punished. There is an interesting idea here where the doctor does descend into madness because of this decision. Now, that should be enough for the story and the underlying elements. Let's discuss the acting performances. Karloff is good here. He's a bit of a drunkard, but he has a history with Wolf and torments him with it. There's also this element of arrogance that works. Danielle was great as this haunted doctor. He's done bad things. He's struggling to come to terms with them. Wade is good as his benevolent med student who knows things. I like that we also have here, let me make sure I'm using everybody's correct names. We got Paula Corday, who is the mother to that Georgina character. She's solid. I thought the little girl was good here, so Moffat. Then there's also Edith Atwater, who is the secret wife to Wolf, and they all kind of help push everybody where it ends up. Lugosi has a minor role, which is fine. I'd say the rest of the cast around software was needed. Let's end with filmmaking. I thought the cinematography was good to capture the era. The costumes helped there. Something I found interesting was the framing. That's not until the end of the third act, but there's a great one for a scare with somebody in water waiting to be dissected. Another is at the climax. This has some limited effects that were used. This is more psychological, so it doesn't necessarily need them. Other than that, the soundtrack favorable was needed. There is a good element with the sound design when Wolf is ascending into madness. So in conclusion, I'm glad that I gave this a rewatch. I didn't remember that this was another of the Luton-produced horror films that has more under the surface. There's good writing here to incorporate the real-life case of Burke and Hare, then to explore class and how the court system looks at it. The acting here is great. Karloff and Danielle lead the way there. Now, this was made well enough with capturing the time and the place that it's set. Cinematography, costumes, and framing help there. All good things with the sound design as well. I'd recommend this if you're a fan of this era, especially like the Luton RKO films. So my rating here for the Body Snatcher is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. Then up next, I got to check out a screener here of Delicate Arch. This is from 2024, written and directed by Matthew Warren. This stars William Leon, Kelly Mack, and Kevin Bolieber. Now, this is a horror film that I believe is also comedy on Letterboxd that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 4.9 on IMDb and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say about a 3 to a 3.5 star movie over there. With our synopsis being, 4 college students with fracturing relationships take a camping trip in order to escape an ecological disaster. Alone in the desert, they begin to suspect that their reality might not be as it seems and soon realize they're being watched. So this is one we got the chance to see thanks to Alex from Simply Legendary Publicity. This is coming to Screenbox as an exclusive, so that's a streaming service that I'm subscribed to, so it piqued my interest more. What made me leery was seeing that this is labeled as a horror comedy. If they're in that order, I tend to be more of a fan, but outside of that information, I came into this one blind. So then where I'm going to start is that The breakdown of horror to comedy in this one, let's start there. It's definitely light on the former elements. I'd say that it's more of a comedy, but it works for me actually. It comes more from the characters who are natural with it. They play so well with each other. There's also comedy that comes from the absurdity of things that we see as it goes on into the surreal realm. I will avoid spoilers here, but that's something I wanted to start off with there. And let me actually go ahead and just jump into who the characters are. We have Grant, who is played by Leon. Now, he is our lead character here, and he is a film buff, and his ex-girlfriend is coming on a trip with him on, get away from this ecological thing. She's Wilda, portrayed by Mac. Now, she's actually my favorite character in this whole thing. Now, Grant is friends with Cody, portrayed by Bolieber, and he is one who he's very socially conscious, but it's almost to the point where he's annoying about it. Then there's Ferg, who's like the drug-type person here. She's portrayed by Renee Leach, and there's also a narrator here portrayed by Katie Self. So, let me tell you what works then, as I was saying. I've already praised the comedy, and it comes from the characters. I do want to start with the action performances. This group that we follow of Leon, Mac, Bolieber, and Leach are great. It feels like they've known each other for years. There's some in-tried jokes that get under each other's skin that felt natural. Grant is interesting as I see things that I've done in the past with what he's doing, so it makes me cringe. He still has feelings for his ex, and they're going on this trip together isn't easy. They're sparked since they're, getting along. He also is leery of Cody, as it seems like there might be something going on between him and Wilda, but maybe it's also he's kind of looking into things that not necessarily he might be reading into too much. Now, she is my favorite character, as I said. I found her too cute to start with, but she has some good comedic timing as well, which is a perk. Ferg is great as a stoner friend who gets paranoid. I also like Cody as this ecological center guy. I just want to give credit to all these four of these actors here. Let's then shift over to filmmaking, since I enjoyed that as well. We get this solid cold open here with this character of Wayne. Now, from there, we get to meet our main group of characters. There's this uneasy feeling with the environmental issue that is coming, forcing them to flee the city. I don't fully understand why it is happening or what is going on, and I don't necessarily know why it was used either, outside of just getting them to leave the city. I'll credit that cinematography and framing as being good, editing as well. They're able to capture where this is set, and then it goes into the surreal. There are things that happened earlier that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it does the farther we get into the story. I did like the trippy nature. It reminded me how unhinged things get in the Outwaters. It just doesn't go as far into the genre as that one does. If I have some gripes here, I saw some people saying something about the AI that was probably used here. I can be forgiving there, because this is a surreal thing after people have taken drugs. The practical effects that we got were good. Soundtrack fit for what was needed with the sound design. I'll finish out with the story. I thought the setup was good. Giving us the reason why these friends are fleeing is a solid thing. Introducing this environmental issue I need a little bit more there. I do like how the night of them telling scary stories get incorporated back into things later. My biggest issue here is the use of a dream sequence. It undoes everything that we got from my understanding. I was along for the ride, and that final act dropped the ball for me. So there isn't anything more I want to delve into, so I'll say in conclusion that this film does some good things. I think we have a group of characters here that we follow that were good. Their performances bring them to life, and they play well off each other. This is well made with the cinematography, framing, and editing helping to build this surreal feel. I even like the practical effects. My problem is that since we go into the abstract, how things play doesn't necessarily make sense, and I feel like it undoes what was set up. I'd still recommend this one as it's a trippy ride, especially if what I said sounds good to you. So my rating here for Delicate Arts is going to be a 5.5 out of 10, and like I said, this should be hitting Screenbox here soon. Then up next isn't a horror film, but it does have some dark elements, so I still wanted to at least do a little mini review here, and that's going to be In Darkness. This is from 2018. This was directed by Anthony Byrne, who co-wrote this with Natalie Dormer, and she stars in this with Ed Skrein, Emily Ratajkowski, and so this is a mystery thriller film that's from a co-production of the United States and United Kingdom. Currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and a 2.7 on Letterboxd, or Synopsis. A blind musician hears a murder committed in the apartment upstairs from hers that sends her down a dark path into London's gritty criminal underworld. So this one here is a film that I learned about thanks to my sister. My guess is that she would have been working through the filmography of Dormer. Now, since I'm a fan of this actress from Game of Thrones, The Tudors, and Hunger Games films, I figured I would check this out as well. I did come into this one blind, which feels like a pun now having seen it, but we are following Sophia, portrayed by Dormer, who is a pianist. It looks like she works for a company that is scoring a thriller film. She's blind, which I found interesting, especially since the conductor comes to her for her expertise. Sophia lives in an apartment building and interacts with her upstairs neighbor. Her name is Veronica, portrayed by Ratajkowski. She likes to make Sophia uncomfortable from the little bit of interactions that we get. So Veronica is interesting, or it's Veronica, something like that, is interesting because her father is a war criminal who's on trial. Sophia hears about him on the news. He is Zoran Radic, portrayed by Jan Bijovet. Now, he works with Alex, portrayed by Jolie Richardson, and her brother Mark, portrayed by Ed Skrein. Now, the catalyst here is that Mark is following Veronica, he's been sleeping with her. He goes to her apartment, and it seems like he pushes her out of the window. A detective on the case is Oscar Mills, portrayed by Neil Mescal. Now, he talks to Sophia, and we see, like, to kind of figure out what she knows. It doesn't seem like much. It's from here that we learn that not everybody is as they seem. People are hiding secrets and are connected. They all soon realize that you cannot trust anybody. So that should recap the story and introduce the characters well enough for their, a lot of moving parts. I also don't know if we need it to make the story as convoluted as it is. Someone I didn't even bring up is Niall, portrayed by James Cosmo, who I believe works as like a secret agent or for like Scotland Yard. Regardless, he's important. And he's looking into things for Zoran and what he's doing. They complicate the character by him having a company that is a front for bad things. He does this under the guise of humanitarian efforts. That works here, as all these characters that we follow are shades of gray, and that is something I appreciate. So an issue that I have, though, is I'm not sure the Sophia character would be able to do certain things that she does. It is a movie that I can forgive that. We get flashes of back when she's a child, and that alludes to the fact that something bad happened. She is making things right. I think this would be better served to condense down some of these elements, so that way, this is probably more of just a me problem. It's a subgenre that's been around for a while, and it does what it can. Like, movies are made more complicated than they need to be, so they can stand out, and I understand that. So what makes this work, though, is the acting. I'm a fan of Dormer, and she plays a blind woman well. She has this look about her that's attractive, but also dangerous. She looks like she's always up to something, so that adds something here when you see her topless, so if that sways you. Screen is good in his role. He has a good look as well, and I'm glad that he's not a mindless killer. He brings emotions that soften the character. Rada Jakowski isn't in this long, but she's attractive, and she's a catalyst to push the story forward. Mescal is good as someone who wants to help Sophia, but he's left in the dark. Bijavit, Cosmo, and Richardson are also solid to push the events to where they end up, as well as complicating them. All that's left to be to say this is made well enough. I was intrigued to see where this story would go. I do think it runs a bit too long and caused me to lose interest. There's a bit too many twists and turns. Not all of them worked. I do think the cinematography and framing were good, though, especially with the fight scenes. It appeared to be all practical effects, which I'm a fan of. I just didn't find this as interesting as other films in this subgenre. If you're looking for a third or even a second tier movie, that's where I'd put this in these espionage inspired films. Could even classify this as a murder mystery as well. So my rating here for In Darkness from 2018 is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. Then up next for you, I have a documentary that I got to watch, VHS Massacre Too. This is written, directed, and features Thomas Edward Seymour, as well as John Bloom, aka Joe Bob Briggs, and James Richardson. This is a documentary about exploitation in horror films that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 6.0 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd with a synopsis being, struggling to keep independent films alive, indie filmmakers travel from the last blockbuster to Troma Studios, encountering threats like media consolidation, censorship that jeopardize indie cinema's survival to VHS to streaming. So this is another one of these Tubi documentaries that I put on while I was at work and treated like a podcast. What is interesting is I didn't realize this was distributed by Troma Entertainment until seeing their logo at the start. I'm also an idiot and watched this before seeing the first one. Regardless, I was born in the late 80s, but I grew up in the latter heyday, so I was intrigued to watch this doc. And I mean, my dad was a low-key collector himself, so my sister and I grew up with a lot of these type of movies. What I love here is that we have John Bloom, aka Joe Bob Briggs, and I'll be honest, I knew who he was growing up. I had seen Monster Vision every now and then. I also had the movie channels, so I tended to watch those more often than watching that, but he's a guy that I love just hearing from. I did recognize Lloyd Kaufman due to having seen a good number of Troma films as a teen as well. Debbie Rochon is somebody who I've come to learn about more, along with J.R. Bookwalter, and then of course, James Gunn. Hearing and seeing these people talk about how streaming has helped kill the giant chain video stores was interesting, as they all kind of seem like, because those video store chains were already killing off smaller cinema anyways, that they kind of, were applauding it. But it's also a bummer to hear how streaming is becoming stricter. The closer that is, to becoming, more of a bigger deal here, especially because, this was made in 2020. So, I mean, we're 5 years out from this one. And it seemed like it was a good avenue for independent filmmakers at first, but it's kind of moving away from that. So it says good production value, so I'll credit there. I didn't know who some of these guys were, so it's interesting to learn about them, as this is a topic that I'm fascinated about. I'm going to go ahead. I've already watched the original one, so, I mean, that since this one grew on me, I've actually heard this one's the better of the two. I kind of agree with there as well, but I rather enjoyed seeing the different, remaining locations like Blockbuster, like American Family Video. It does have me nostalgic for those days of the video store and everything like that to pick out movies. So my rating here for VHS Massacre 2, 6.5 out of 10. Then I have a short film I'm going to cover here of Enter the Room. This is written and directed by Harry Waldman, and this stars Richard Holton and Peter Masney. This is a horror mystery short thriller film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 9.2 on IMDb and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say a lot of them are 5-star. I'm assuming it's going to be people that are kind of associated with the project, but this is sitting around, I'd say, like a 4-star over there, though. So the synopsis: Brian is visited by his brother Jeremy, who needs a place to stay as he settles into a new city. The two polar opposite personalities begin to clash as Jeremy's presence poses a threat to Brian's way of life. I should say here, Brian is portrayed by Masney, and then Jeremy by Holton. So I thought the synopsis did a great job of recapping this. I got the chance to see this when our writer and director had reached out to see if I was interested to watch a screener of it. So we have a 2-person show here that's confined to this apartment. That adds an element here of being claustrophobic. I'd bet part of this is budgetary, but to be honest, it makes it work even better. Even more so that the reveal near the end of this short, it's also unrelenting. It doesn't waste any time to see Brian being hard on his brother with setting the ground rules. There's also an interesting element here where we never see them getting along. The closest is early on. They're watching something together, but Brian goes to bed, and then a fight starts about needing the other one to as well because of needing to not being one to being kept awake. Now, something interesting here is the storytelling is that we get a few seconds of Brian tidying up before Jeremy arrives. I thought this was an interesting way to show how neurotic Brian is, and then we jump right into these two living together. There are clues along the way that not everything that we've heard might be true. The other element is that not everything is as it seems either. There's a montage of Brian accusing Jeremy of different things. When we finally see the truth, it makes sense to even more why Jeremy is odd and denies things throughout. Then there's also the acting performances here. Masney does a great job as, seeming like his brother who is doing something nice. He has strict rules and comes off as like a clean freak and constantly nags Jeremy. And it makes him the villain. That's until we see how things end up. Holton, on the other hand, is more jovial and carefree. It's like a constant being berated that he has character shifts. What is good here is that by the end, my thoughts on both had shifted where they're gray characters, and that makes this work. Let's discuss filmmaking. First, my disclaimer on how I judge short films: is it tell a complete story or does it need to be fleshed out more? There isn't a right or wrong way here. I just want to say that. I do think that this tells a complete story and doesn't need to have more added. There are a couple things that were ambiguous to me, and I could have just missed something there as well, but that adds to my intrigue. I thought the cinematography and framing were good. This becomes an assault on the senses near the end. The editing was good there. This flew by, and I was hooked to see where it would go. I thought the soundtrack fit for what was needed on top of that. So then in conclusion here, this is a short film that I thought packed a punch. It's an interesting setup. We have these two characters and how things develop shift our perspective on them. The acting helps to bring them to life, so credit to Masney and Holton. We have a contained setting that works. This is a claustrophobic atmosphere that is also good. Cinematography and framing capture that. This is one that I'd recommend checking out for sure, whether or kind of wherever you find short films. So my rating here for Enter the Room is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. Then my last little mini review here is going to be the last episode of American Horror Story Season 3 of The Thing Under the Bed. So this was directed by Courtney Hoffman, and then this was written by Manny Cotto, and the synopsis: a woman who suffers from terrifying nightmares searches for answers when the thing under the bed takes her husband. So that's a little bit of a spoiler, but we do get a cold open, and then that's kind of how things end after we come back from it, I believe. So the main character here is Gillian Fletcher, portrayed by Debbie Ryan, and then she is married to, I believe it would be Mark, who is portrayed by Matthew Holcomb. So we actually start off, though, with a little girl and thinking there's something under her bed. Her dad ends up messing with her, and he's watching a horror something, or like a movie or a show. Now she's terrified, and he's asking her to be brave and saying how he's going to make her favorite breakfast. And then we end up coming over here to Jillian, who is an adult, and she's married, as I was saying. Now she wants to become pregnant, or he wants to get pregnant where she's resistant, and he's being kind of callous about it. So she's actually not changed her mind on things because she's using birth control, and then we end up seeing something happens here where he gets pulled underneath the bed by something. So then she is tormented by what is happening. So she goes to her sister of Megan, who is portrayed by Melanie Field, and now she ends up trying to do research to figure out, because she's the prime suspect, and she has a Detective Watts portrayed by Matthew Del Negro, who keeps coming around and kind of ruffling her feathers. Now, her sister doesn't believe her, and she ends up going to this hospital, though, to meet somebody who might actually believe her and knows what's kind of maybe going on here, of Niles Taylor, portrayed by Jeff Hiller. So she ends up figuring out that there's this character of Mary Gentile, portrayed by Melanie Diaz, where every time she's been in a coma, but she has these nightmares, and when they do, people disappear. So Mary was actually this little girl from the opening, and there's something more going on here, and there could be something with like shared dreams and maybe a whole other type of world or whatnot. and kind of, what could be going on here. So that's where I'm going to leave things. I don't necessarily want to spoil it from there, but I rather enjoyed this one. This third season has actually been pretty strong, to be honest. So my rating here for The Thing Under the Bed is going to be a 7 out of 10. So that's all I have here for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
There she is. Guess what? Daddy is going to get you dressed for school today.
We are descendants of the gods. This land was always ours. But we must never relent.
We're nowhere and everywhere.
You're from Virginia, right? I can tell. You're special.
We are the future.
You're not like the others.
I'm coming!
Whoever you were before, that's over.
What are we doing? What is the plan?
We go tonight.
911, what is your emergency?
And for my first feature review is going to be Antebellum. This is from 2020. This was written and directed by Gerard Bush and Christopher Renz. This stars Janelle Monáe, Eric Lang, and Jenna Malone, while also featuring Jack Houston, Arabella Landron, Tongai Chirasi, Achuk Medchak, Kiersey Clemens, T.C. Mathern, Robert Maramao, Mark Richardson, London Boyce, Bernard Hawk, Dana Schaff, Gabri Sidibe, Todd Voles, Lily Cowles, and Carolyn Cole. This is a psychological suspense mystery drama horror thriller film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and a 2.7 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis. Successful author Veronica Henley finds herself trapped in a horrifying reality and must uncover the mind-bending mystery before it's too late. Now, Veronica is being portrayed by Monet, and this is a film that I remember when it came out. Part of it was that the pandemic delayed it. Jamie and I saw the trailer, and we were intrigued to see it. I didn't miss this one because when it came time to do my end-of-year roundup, the consensus was that this wasn't very good, and I also think, Jamie just wasn't in, we weren't going to the theater or anything like that, and it was just kind of more difficult to go, but this still went on a list of films to check out. Now, I considered making it a review a handful of times. I finally pulled the trigger, as this doubles as a black horror and women appreciation in the genre, so that's why I want to go ahead and check this one out here. And I do have some featured notes first before I jump into the movie itself, and we have two directors here. First is Bush, and this is his feature film debut. Now, he does have a short to his credit as well, now the same for his co-director of Renz. There is an assistant director here of Chelsea Donison. She has 4 credits, first that I've seen, and this is the only one that she's done in genre so far. Then our directors here are also our writers. Again, the only credit for Bush, and the same for Renz. I'll then shift over to the cast. First is Monet. She's been in 25 films, and I've seen 2. The other one was Glass Onion, which isn't horror, and this is the only credit in genre that she has out so far. She's attached to something called Don't Look, which doesn't have a release date as of yet. Then her co-star of Lang has been in 17 movies and 1 short. I've seen him in 3 things. Not horror, he was in Nightcrawler and You Don't Know Jack. Has 6 in genre, and the top 3 are The Empty Man, which is on my very short list to check out, Day Shift, and brand new Cherry Flavor. Then I'll look at Malone. Now, she's been in 65 features and 8 shorts. I've seen her in 13 things. Not horror, but dark in nature as Donnie Darko. Now, the Hunger Games sequels, 2 through 4, she's also in Sucker Punch. In genre, she has 6. I've seen 4. I've already brought her up with Consecration, but I've seen this, Neon Demon in the Ruins. I have not seen Swallowed or Angelica. And then I also wanted to kind of include here something that I was just thinking about while I was going through this. These writers and our directors here, Bush and Renz, they did music videos from some IMDb trivia that I was reading earlier, ahead of this. All right, then, for this movie here, we get a great tracking shot to start off with of a plantation. It appears to be during the Civil War as we see Confederate soldiers. There is a harrowing scene to set the stage where a slave tries to flee during the commotion. The attempt fails due to the man who oversees them of Captain Jasper, portrayed by Houston. He does some things that are pretty horrific. We have Eli, who is portrayed by Carissa, who watches on in horror as his wife is attacked. Then we have Eden, who is portrayed by Monet, who is witness to this, having woken up on the back of a horse. The film them give us a lay of the land is what's going on in this plantation. No one is allowed to talk that is a slave. Eli and Eden seem to be forming a plan in secret to get away, but this is difficult. She is visited each night by someone referred to as him, who's portrayed by Lang. She doesn't have a choice in the matter. Things turn bleaker when Julia, portrayed by Clemens, is brought in. She comes to visit Elizabeth, or she is brought before Elizabeth, who is portrayed by Malone, where she is given that name. Julia then visits Eden, telling her about a secret that she has. What then turns everything on its head is that we see that Veronica wakes up in her bed. She is married to Nick, portrayed by Richardson, and they have a daughter of Kennedy, portrayed by Boyce. Veronica is a writer, as the synopsis says, but she's also an activist. She was debating on the news with Senator Denton, portrayed by Lang, where he says some questionable things. Veronica has a lecture that she's given soon, so she's preparing to leave. Before she does, she gets an odd call that she takes from the character of Elizabeth. Now, there's some other odd things that happen here, like the hotel concierge ignoring her and then being cold. She then meets up with her friends Dawn, portrayed by Sidibe, and then Sarah by Cowles. There are more odd things that happen along the way. Veronica starts to notice them until everything kind of makes sense as to what we saw and what is truly happening here. So that's where I'll leave my recap introduction to the characters. Now, where I want to start is, what kind of lured me in here. Something I didn't even include is that this starts with a quote from William Faulkner about how the past is never dead, it's not even the past. Now, we have a great tracking shot to set everything up. It's then difficult to watch because we get the lay of the land of what is happening to the slaves on this plantation. This includes a scene where Eden isn't following the rules and gets branded. Then there's some good filmmaking that we see here with Veronica waking up and rubbing her lower back where the iron was. Now, something I remember from the trailer and seeing this is I was wondering if this was going to be like a time travel film or something along these lines. So I'm not going to spoil anything outside of just making that statement, but that was the vibe that I had early on. So what I'm going to say is I love the character of Veronica. She's a strong, independent woman who has a family and loves them. She deals with the dilemma both my wife and I do about how do we give ourselves to our work, but then that makes you too tired where you are needed, by your family. She's doing more important work than me. I love that when we hear her presentation, it's everything that's very socially relevant, and if anything, it's even more on the forefront with things that are happening in the current climate. Monet is great here. She also has this interesting role as Eden, where after the reveals, things make more sense. What I will say is that this is forcing her character to do what the other version of her is preaching. I do like this idea, and at first they're just words until actions are truly needed. Now, since I've referenced a social commentary, let me delve into that a little bit more. This film is heavy-handed. I do think that at times it is needed. And what it's exploring here is true. There have been horrible atrocities committed, especially in the United States. Just sweeping them under the rug and pretending they didn't exist isn't good. Acknowledging them and doing better is what we should be striving for. There are people out there that do yearn for the times to be back kind of like this. They are radical and a small minority, I will say that. And the problem is that they can be loud and obnoxious. An issue that comes from this movie is how it explores this topic, and it's borrowed from another movie that did it better. It made me want to watch that film. I do think this would have been better served to either veil things a bit better or approach it from a slightly different way. I'll be honest, I still enjoy what they were doing here. It just isn't as effective as it could be. Let's then shift gears to go over to what makes this work, and that's the acting. I've already said what we need to for Monet. After her performance, I thought that Houston was great too. He is such a villain getting into his character. I also love Clemens and her role, even though it is minor. I don't know if they did enough with the Lang character to fully work. Now, the reveal there was interesting, and I thought they did hide it well enough outside of just because it was such a quick thing where you kind of, it comes full circle is what I will say. Now, I was disappointed in Malone's role. Now, how her character fits in everything works, she just plays it so odd. I would also say that Charissa was good and how things there were heartbreaking. Sidibe and Cowles were interesting and add character to their scenes. I do love Richardson and Boyce to help develop Veronica. They also give her a reason to fight. Now, there is one side character that is minor in this role, but was definitely powerful in one scene with Julia. That worked for me. And it kind of really just frames the whole idea of masculinity here. Other than that, the rest of this rounded out for what was needed here. That would be the performances. All that's left out for some trivia is going to be filmmaking. The cinematography, framing, and camera movements were all good. They do little things here and there that I appreciated, whether it was focusing on different things with Veronica to make you think of Eden or to show you a character that seems off. I will credit there. I also thought the soundtrack fit for what was needed. Now, we are seeing that the past. I did like how authentic the outfits look. It does feel like the era. There are some limited effects, but it also isn't that type of movie. There were things that they do to have realism, and I appreciated that. It does make me cringe at times. The only gripe here would be that I don't know if they hid the reveal as well as it could, and that also ultimately kind of just makes the impact fall short. So, some trivia here that I found. Bush got the idea from a nightmare he once had. He initially thought it would be a good basis for a short story, but later developed it with co-director Renz into a screenplay for this feature. This was Monet's first lead role. The directors here stated that they actually acquired the lenses used to shoot Gone with the Wind in order to create the same feel of that movie, but at the same time correct it by showing a more accurate depiction of the antebellum period, especially the treatment of slaves. Despite the marketing implying otherwise, Jordan Peele had no direct involvement with this film. The producer in question is Sean McKintrick, who produced Get Out and Us. Was supposed to have a theatrical release, but instead went to streaming due to the pandemic. The butterfly motif on the posters was an intentional homage to the butterfly effect and Silence of the Lambs. This is a directorial debut for Bush and Renz, who had both only done short films and music videos prior. Horror films, including The Shining and Silence of the Lambs, served as inspiration. While Veronica is Skyping with Elizabeth, her husband asks what she wants for breakfast, and she replies with vegan pancakes. Monet is a real-life vegan herself. And then Monet and Clemens previously appeared in Lady and the Tramp 2019, that remake, 1 year before this. As indicated by her Spielman College sweatshirt, Veronica went to an HBCU. Feature film debut of fashion model Achak Majak. And the flag that was raised before the general arrived was a naval flag, being a rectangle. The battle flag for the army is squared. Furthermore, the battle flag was also used during an actual battle. Otherwise, the individual unit would have a unique flag that displays the regiment name and battle honors. So in conclusion, I didn't hate this film. I do have gripes that other people have with this, and it is warranted. What stood out to me was that we have a message here that is important. I just think that they went a little bit too heavy with it. The story to veil it could have been better to help the impact. Monet is good here. I thought the rest of the cast do push her to where things end up. I'd say this is well made with the cinematography, framing, camera movements, the costumes, and even the limited effects leading the way. This doesn't do well enough in hiding the reveal, and it makes me want to watch another movie that uses it better. I do think the hate is a bit much, but I won't die on a hill defending this one. If this sounds like something you'd enjoy, I'd recommend it. So my rating here for Antebellum is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. Don't necessarily think I need to delve anything deeper there. So what I will go ahead and do is get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
There have been two moments in my life when I was happiest. The first was the day I met Josh.
I'm Josh.
I'm Iris. And the second, the day I killed him.
Just relax. Remember to smile and act happy. Do they know? Iris, wake up.
What are you doing? Shut her down already.
What is she talking about, Josh?
This was not part of the plan.
I didn't mean to.
Did you jailbreak your sex bot?
Wow, Josh. The days of you controlling me are over.
Are you breaking up with me?
It's not you. It's me.
Yeah, she's tied up inside, so she's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm.
Eli, Iris. Shh, baby, you're on the phone.
And for my second featured review here is going to be Companion. This is from 2025, written and directed by Drew Hancock. Now this stars Sophie Thatcher, Jack Quaid, and Lucas Gage, while also featuring here Megan Suri, Harvey Guillen, Rupert Friend, Jabuki Young White, Matt McCarthy, Mark Menchaca, Woody Fu, and Ashley Lambert. This is a dark comedy, psychological thriller, sci-fi horror film that is from the United States. This is currently sitting on a 7.4 on IMDb and a 3.6 on Letterboxd. For our synopsis, a billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to his lakeside estate. So Iris is portrayed by Thatcher. So this is one that I caught the beginning of the trailer as it pulled my attention. I figured out the title, saw that it was going to be horror enough, and then added it to a list to see. Because IMDb actually doesn't list it that way. I believe Letterboxd might, but this is definitely a horror film in my opinion. But so thanks to social media, the reveal of Sophie Thatcher's characters was spoiled for me. The issue there was that I was focusing on the language of things in the movie when I was settling down. So I'll tread lightly to not reveal anything here, but something I just wanted to share. I did see this on Monday of its opening weekend when the time finally allowed me as well. So then, let's do some featured notes first, and I'll start with our director here of Hancock. This is his feature film debut. Now, he has directed a short and has an upcoming horror film of My Wife and I Bought a Ranch. Then as a writer, he has 4 credits. Only one that is out, and it's not in genre, is Fred 3 Camp Fred. Now, he also is writing the Ranch film that I've referenced already, and is attached to the remake of The Faculty, which I didn't necessarily know if that was going forward or not. Then over to our cast, I'll start with Thatcher. She's been in 8 films and 3 shorts. I've seen 4 of her works, all in horror. I've seen this, Maxine, Heretic, and the Boogeyman remake. Those are her only 4 in genre. Then let's go to her co-star and love interest in the film of Quaid. He has been in 23 features and 5 shorts. I've seen him in 8 movies. He's been in Oppenheimer and 2 of the Hunger Games films, as well as the voice of a Peter Parker in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. He also has 4 in genre. I've seen all of them with the Scream 5 and 6 films, this and Tragedy Girls. Then last, I'll look at Gage. He has been in 23 movies and 3 shorts. I've seen him in 2. He has 9 in genre. I've seen this and Smile 2. The top 3 that I haven't are Assassination Nation, Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, and Midnight Kiss. Alright then, let's jump into this movie here, and we begin at a grocery store. Iris is shopping and goes to the produce. It is there that she meets Josh, who's portrayed by Quaid. Now, he makes a fool of himself by knocking over a bunch of apples, making Iris smile. Then she wakes up, and she's in a car with him. She was having a dream about how they first met, and now they're a couple. Josh has a self-driving car, and he's quite charming. Iris is nervous, though, as she doesn't think his friends like her, to which Josh tries to alleviate her concerns. He does point out that one in question of Kat, portrayed by Suri, doesn't really like anybody, so you can't really hold that against her. They arrive, and Josh is shocked. The place is bigger than he expected. It's also farther out in the middle of nowhere. This place belongs to Sergey, portrayed by Friend. Now, what we will learn here is that he's not a very nice guy. He is married, but cheating on his wife with Kat, who is his girlfriend. Now, he's also Russian. Now, Eli, portrayed by Guillen, is making dinner, and his boyfriend is also there, Patrick, portrayed by Gage. Much like Iris was worried about, Kat is cold towards her. Now, the group has a fun night regardless, of drinking, dancing, just hanging out. The next morning, Josh is hungover. It is here we truly get a glimpse that there is something not quite right with Iris. She wants to go down to the beach, but Josh isn't ready. She does go without him. It is there that she discovers a knife in her pocket. Sergey joins her, and he is forward with his advances. This turns violent, as he is the person from the synopsis who is murdered. Iris goes inside, covered in blood. She tries to explain to everybody what happened and how it was self-defense, but it's here that we learn the truth about her. There is more going on underneath the surface here with this group, as this bad situation turns even worse. So that's my recap and introduction of the characters. Where I want to start is that I rather enjoyed the setup here. We subtly get introduced that technology plays a big role here. Josh is a self-driving car. Despite how far in the woods the cabin is, it's a high-tech inside. It's like a high-tech setup. It is funny as well that Josh makes a comment that he was told it was rustic and this house is quite modern. Now, since it does so much to normalize it, it's less jarring with the reveals that come after that, and I did appreciate it. Now that I set that up, let me bring up the first reveal of the movie that was spoiled for me ahead of seeing it. The trailer might have had a line in it, but since I don't watch the whole thing, I can't confirm, and I haven't gone back to watch the trailer either. I do know that I saw a comment from somebody on social media that gave it away. It didn't ruin it, though. I will say that there are hints. Since I knew I was looking for them, one deals with the weather. That made me chuckle, and in defense of everything that I'm coming down on, at the time of the rising action, when the first act is coming to its close, that's when we figure it out. It is from there that it leans into this aspect quite a bit, and there's so much more to it. So, like I said, I don't think it necessarily ruined my viewing. It just made me more vigilant. Sticking with that and being more to it, there is social commentary here that I want to explore. This is looking at toxic masculinity, bullying, and misogyny. Iris is infatuated with Josh. She is worried that his friends don't like her. The only one who doesn't is Kat. Now, there is more to this, though, and I'll digress. It is here that we see bullying. It makes for an interesting debate with the reveal, though. There's also toxic masculinity, is that Josh was thought to be a nice guy. The deeper into this that we get, we see that he's entitled, and he just kind of expects Iris to, kind of do everything here. And like I said, with the reveal, it kind of makes this an interesting idea. Now, how he uses people around him is something that he accuses Kat of. My only issue with the exploration of these ideas, it is a bit ham-fisted. Now, I do think part of that is making sure that we're fully on board with Iris by the time that she fights back. I'm not sure if we need it, though, as it does get in the way just a bit. Let's then shift over to discussing the acting, as I think that helps make this work. Thatcher is great in her role. This isn't an easy one to do, though, because of the reveal. I thought she nailed it. She's been in a good handful of horror early in her career, and I'm hoping she does more. Quaid also works here as her boyfriend. There's a natural awkwardness that is charming. He can also turn on arrogance that is needed. He also impressed me with his character arc here. So I'd also say that Gage, Suri, Guillen, and Friend, they were all good as this group that are in this cabin. Other than that, I did like the cameo by Menchaca as the deputy. The acting here was kind of good across the board. Now, I'm going to do the filmmaking before I jump over to trivia. And the first thing that I also rather enjoyed here is capturing the isolation of where this is set. There's a dense forest. It is miles to the next house and even farther to get into town. There is this main road nearby which allows other characters to come. The cinematography and framing were good to capture this. I thought that the practical effects that we got were solid as well. There is CGI here. How it is used was good. The practical effects were solid. The look of the blood, after effects of the attacks, and things of the nature were solid. Other than that, I thought the soundtrack fit for what was needed there. So then, there's not a lot of trivia, but I'm going to do a little bit of this. When Josh receives his delivery of Iris, he's listening to the song Iris by Goo Goo Dolls, which is also written for the movie City of Angels, which starred Jack Quaid's mother, Meg Ryan. Kreger, as in Zach Kreger initially, eyed Companion as a directorial follow-up to Barbarian, though the team wound up setting the project to its directorial debut of Hancock. Now, there is an anagram here for the name Iris that I'm not going to give away. No year is given for the film. However, Josh's phone reads Sunday, June 25th. The years this date falls on in the 21st century would be 2028, 2034, 2045, 2056, 62, 67, 72, 78, 89, 95. I can't believe somebody did all of that. The picture of Josh's phone at the end, when it's left by the cabin, has a broken pixel line that passes through the head of Josh. That's a little bit of foreshadowing. There's actually something with Patrick's name with another movie that involves something. I'm trying to be very... the password of Sergei's... pretty much everything he has is Stalin's birthday. Friend appeared in the comedy The Death of Stalin in 2017. Josh repeatedly refers to Iris using the nickname Beep Boop, which is kind of funny once you kind of figure everything out. And then I think that's all I'm going to do there for trivia, just because I don't necessarily want to spoil things here. So in conclusion, I rather enjoyed this. There's a solid premise. It's a story where we see how issues can arise from a plan that complicates things farther and farther. The acting here is good to bring the characters to life. Thatcher leads the way there with Quaid. The rest push them to where they end up. I thought this was also well made with the cinematography, framing, setting, and effects leading the way. My biggest issue is that the social commentary is just a bit too in your face. Scaling it back would make it more subtle and less preachy. It doesn't need that to work. I just still would recommend giving this a watch, as it is quite poignant. So my rating here for Companion is going to be an 8 out of 10. So that's all I got to have here. That I'm not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily think I need to do that outside of just revealing things. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is get you over to the last break before I close out the show. And welcome back one last time here, and just to kind of go through my social medias and stuff, if you'd like to send me an email, you can send that at journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. You can send me any sort of feedback, or if you have any questions or anything, go ahead and shoot them there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or if you want to send me any screener links or anything like that, anything podcast related, you can send it via that way. If you'd like to read any of the written reviews, I'll direct you to Reviews of the Dead, and that's horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to become friends with me on Facebook, I'm David Michigan Garrett Jr. On Twitter, I'm Buckeye from Mish. Letterboxd, I'm David OSU. On Instagram, I'm DavidOSU87. On Threads, I'm DavidOSU87. And then Journey with a Cinephile has its own Instagram at Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. Now, all of these ones I will be sharing like my ratings on, whatnot. I know for Letterboxd, all of the reviews are going to be for horror and non-horror alike. Instagram, I will be sharing over there is my different like posters and everything for things that I'm reviewing. My personal account, you might see some personal pictures every now and then if I can remember to take them. And then, kind of same thing for Threads. And then Journey with a Cinephile is going to be more of just kind of posting podcast-related different stuff over there. And I'll also direct you to the Nightclub Discord channel, as I have a little section over there where we have some good conversations. I post all of my reviews and any new podcast episodes or some of the things I'm watching when I actually have time to post that. So keep an eye out over there, and I'll have the link for that and everything else in the show notes there. And then I'm also going to direct you, a way that you can actually listen to the show is going to be through the Pod Nation TV. This is a streaming service and everything like that. There will be a link in the blog posts for all of my episodes, so if you'd like to listen to it that way, it's kind of a cool little thing. You can definitely do that through like Roku TV, and there's some other apps for it as well, just as another way for you to consume this podcast if you decide to. There's also a lot of other great shows that are on that network as well. And for my next episode is going to be 276, where I'm going to be doing another women appreciation in horror here. And the two feature reviews are going to be Heart Eyes. I know there is, a couple that is the main characters there, but that'll be the one that I watch for 2025. And then I'm also going to be doing Slumber Party Massacre Too. I have not seen that one. I've only seen the original one there, so I'm kind of intrigued there. Now, my Voyage to the Fives rewatch is going to be House of Dracula. I haven't seen this one for quite a while. Then I also have some mini reviews, and I'm not necessarily sure what I'm going to be doing there as of yet, but, I will have stuff going to end out and to fill out that episode there. That wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending